Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC. It is time to resume basketball activities after the All-Star break, and this time we're going to preview a Knicks matchup, this time on Thursday night against the Chicago Bulls, a team the Knicks have not beaten this season. In fact, the last time the Knicks played the Bulls at the Garden, Kobe White's hair led to a 4-point play. A 3-point play, 3 free throws that eventually led to a Knicks loss. The Knicks then lost the day on Derrick Rose night, which wasn't a Derrick Rose retirement ceremony or jersey retirement. It was just Derrick Rose night. And the Knicks lost the second night of a back-to-back. We remember it as the day that Karl Anthony Towns was inexplicably still in the game. And the Knicks ended up losing him for a couple days. But I digress. It is time to resume the second half of the Knicks schedule. 28 games remaining. The Knicks sit at 36-18, fighting it out for playoff positioning at the top of the Eastern Conference. And then there's our opponent tonight, the Chicago Bulls, who come into tonight's game at 22-33 in a heated contest for the 10th seed at the moment. They fighting it out with the Philadelphia 76ers, who the Knicks will see next week, and the Brooklyn Nets, who were 6-1 in their final 7 games before the All-Star break and sit just a game and a half back, one in the loss column of the Chicago Bulls. But you'd never know that they were in a race by the way the Bulls have been playing since the trade deadline. Let's get more info about what life is like in Chicago since the trade deadline with our returning guest from the CHGO network, CHGO Bulls in particular, Will Gottlieb. Will, welcome back to Knicks Film School, sir.
GMAC, thanks for having me back, man. Always excited to talk Bulls Knicks with you.
I'm glad you're excited because I know it's been tough lately.
It's been tough, but you know what? Second half of the season, like you said, second 27 games. The Bulls are going to be doing a lot of evaluating their young talent and seeing what happens here. So it'll be fun to watch.
So I'm glad it's fun to watch. I genuinely mean that. I don't hope a lot of winning, especially against this Knicks team tonight, happens. Let's talk about the game real quick to any paranoid Knicks fans, because the phrase trap game gets thrown around a lot in sports. Sometimes it's not earned, but the idea, for those who don't know, of a trap game is that you're looking ahead to the following matchups. And the 3 games the Knicks play after this Bulls game, they play the Cleveland Cavaliers Friday night in Cleveland. They play the Boston Celtics Sunday at 1 p.m. in Boston. And then they come back home to play the Philadelphia 76ers on Tuesday. So you would tend to look ahead to 2 teams that you're chasing in the Eastern Conference and one that you had a heated playoff matchup with last year. You might overlook this Bulls team that almost lost by 60 points right before the All-Star break to the Pistons. I am not naive enough to say that any team is a walkover. And so this is actually a trap game in my mind, especially since Josh Hart might not play or isn't going to play. OG Anunoby is still questionable for this game, and the Knicks aren't getting Mr. Robinson back. So, Will, I'm going to task you with the impossible. Can you relieve the worries of New Yorkers everywhere that may be worried about this game against the Chicago Bulls tonight? How would you quell concern?
I think like you're absolutely, the Bulls are the ultimate trap game team at this point. Like they just are. They're terrible since really like the last 15 or so games. Minus 10.2 net rating, which is obviously one of the worst in the league, 29th to be exact, since January 15th. Since they traded Zach LaVine, it's been even worse. They're the worst net rating in the league, minus 13.6. They're 2-6, but they're also a team that shoots a ton of threes and can randomly get hot. And when that happens, like, you have a good chance to win if you're, outscoring your opponent. I think that's kind of what happened in the game that you referred to last time in the Garden. And then also against the Knicks on Derrick Rose night, as you mentioned, like they play fast, they shoot a ton of threes, and they can wear teams down. So this is definitely like, I think they're a trap game for most teams in the league. They're a team that is not like making a championship push by any means, but they are a little frisky at times. But that said, they could also just get super cold and not make anything and lose by 40 to the Pistons, as you mentioned. So there's really like only 2 outcomes, and they happen to be on either end of the extreme with this team. But like they need to be losing games. They need to be getting themselves into the bottom whatever of the tankathon order and out of the play-in range. They are somehow 11 games below 500 and still in the play-in, which is just like insane. But that's where they are. And I think they kind of need to focus on getting out of there. So no Patrick Williams, I believe, for the Bulls tonight. We'll see if that's like a good thing or a bad thing for the Knicks. But definitely, like, you want to have the healthy skepticism against any team that you go against, and not a time where you can like look over anyone, especially first game out of All-Star break.
That started out so comforting with how bad they've been over the last 15 games since the January 15th date that you spoke about, since the Zach LaVine trade. And then you threw in that a team that hits a ton of threes or takes a ton of threes might make a ton of threes, which the Knicks have experienced against the Bulls and just flat out a lot this season when they've played teams that take a ton of threes. The variance of a team like that, I think, scares up some Knicks fans. But to your point, the Knicks, if they have any hints of seriousness that they want to take advantage of the rest of the season, should take care of business tonight. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Speaking
and like,
go ahead.
The Bulls are just like not a team that's really equipped to defend the Knicks. Like, even without Josh Hart, who obviously plays a huge role, like they've got some guys that can defend the point of attack. Like Lonzo, I think will be back tonight. He missed the last couple of games before the deadline, just with like the flu. Had kind of like a bad sickness. He said he lost a ton of weight. And then you got Ayodesumu, who can kind of hassle a smaller guard like Brunson. But like, just there's no way you can defend the pick and pop with Towns and just pulling what little rim protection the Bulls have away from the basket. Like, there's no reason the Knicks should lose this game. However, the Bulls can get hot from time to time. And like the last 15 games that I mentioned, when they've been struggling, they've been 20th in 3-point percentage. The season on the whole, they've been 9th, and obviously those 15 games drag it down a bit. So when they get hot, they can win some games. But that's kind of like the reductive way to think about basketball, right? Like when you're making more shots than your opponent, then you have a good chance to win.
Yeah. I guess the note I'll make, if you're a Knicks fan looking for a point of confidence, Cat's just kind of torched the Bulls this season. 2 of his 5 or 6 40-point games this season are against the Chicago Bulls.
Almost 50 last game. I mean, or it was in the Garden. Yeah,
it was the one in the Garden when they were making the comeback. I believe
he
had 46 or 47. It was something that during that comeback he was their main cog. That
they just have no answer for that.
Yeah, especially with Vooch. Like, God bless him, he's had a great year. I'm actually surprised he's still with the Bulls, which we'll get to in a second. But the Cat going off in this game would, and the fact he's not on the injury report, he was dealing with a thumb injury for a minute, a knee injury for a little bit, and right before the All-Star break, there was 2 games against the Hawks and then the Pacers where he really started to find himself a bit. So hopefully that Karl-Anthony Towns returns, and this is a game that Knicks fans don't have to stress out too much. I'm not counting any chickens before they hatch, so we'll see how it plays out on the court. Speaking of seeing how it plays out on the court, you mentioned the lottery balls that the Bulls are specifically paying attention to. 22 and 33. You might get some cooperation from a Nets team that doesn't know that they're tanking, and a Sixers team who might just get better. There's also this Raptors thing that the Raptors are 17 and 38, but have a strength of schedule that it's 30th in the NBA, the easiest schedule remaining. And shout out to Fred Katz, who pointed this out. It's a 39% winning percentage of remaining schedule strength. They have 3 more with the Wizards, 2 more with the Jazz. Like, every team they play is ass the rest of the season.
I didn't know that. That's good news for the Bulls.
So, like, there is a world where if the Bulls do commit to going the other direction, that's 3 teams right there that could pass them in the lottery standings.
Well, here's the thing about the Bulls, though. They haven't committed to go in that direction. They've like put 1 foot in to go in that direction. That's what happens when you trade 3 of your 4 best players in the matter of 6 months, but they haven't put 2 feet in. And so I think there's this, I mean, you talk about healthy skepticism. Like, that's exactly how a lot of Bulls fans are feeling right now of, can the Bulls like actually put their ego aside and go towards the bottom and do what is best for this organization to get, or at least get a chance at, a franchise player in the draft? Because that's really what they need. I mean, they've been floating around for 10 years now, waiting for the right guy, the next Derrick Rose, to, get lucky in the lottery and bring them to their next era. And they just haven't had that. So they need to put themselves in that position. And the front office has started to move that direction, but they haven't really fully committed to it yet. And I think that's part of how you end up in the middle.
Well, so you're hinting at where I wanted to go with my next question. And it's really the vibe of the fan base about a team that hasn't fully gone all the way in that direction. Like the middle, I mean, flat out, it sucks. When you're a team that's destined for 35, 37 wins, even in a year with the flattened lottery odds, or just in the Eastern Conference where you could theoretically make the play-in and still end up with a top 10 worst record in the sport. The fact that there's no, I mean, you tell me, are Bulls fans frustrated that it doesn't seem, unless you get some lottery luck this year, that there is this key star, this young player to build around, whereas you look at other situations and that's exactly that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement around Matas Buzelis, the Bulls rookie, who obviously was in the dunk contest in the Rising Stars game. He's a local kid, grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and has been like really, exciting the last 10 games or so. Had a 10 for 10 game recently against Miami that the Bulls won. And a lot of that was due to him playing well. So I think there's like, and obviously like Kobe White, who people are talking about in the chat here, like he's a nice young player. I don't know if the Bulls are like ready to, call him the franchise cornerstone, but like he's a great piece to have. Same with Ayo Dosunmu, another local kid. So I think there is some excitement about the future, but to your point, like this organization just like hasn't been clear about what the plan is. And it's very obvious to the casual fan, even somebody who's pretty checked out, that they're not like competing at a high level, and they haven't been for the last several years. And so when that's not the case, you have to be clear about what you have to be selling either wins or hope. And I think the Bulls have kind of failed to do either of those things. And so, Bulls fans are looking for hope wherever they can find it. That has been Matas Buzelis this year. But yeah, I think people would feel a lot better if there was just like a cohesive plan and good communication about what that plan was, because you're right. I mean, they need to pick a lane. And I think that they're kind of just trying to have their cake and eat it too, in terms of like not really fully bottom out, but still get lucky in the draft and kind of kickstart their retool that way. And I just don't know if that's possible, but that's what the Bulls are trying.
Were you surprised look, they made the trade that they made at the deadline, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was the first time they had made a trade at a deadline in, just tell me how many years?
Nikola Vucevic trade in 2021. So 4 years.
4 years. 4 years since now was that. So it's if I remember right, it's just the Vucevic trade in 2021. Then we have to go all the way to this past summer, the Caruso trade that was made.
Yeah.
And then this one of Zach LaVine. It's 2 trades since the Vooch trade.
They did, and they would definitely point to this too. They made like a 2-for-1 second round pick swap where they traded their 2 future seconds to get into the second round like 2 years ago, I think it was, to draft Julian Phillips. So like not really a needle mover, but yeah, it basically went between the Lauri Markkanen trade when they sent him to the Cavs until they traded Caruso for Giddey this summer. So
yeah,
just unprecedented levels of inactivity.
So to that inactivity, were you surprised that, Vooch didn't eventually get moved? Were you surprised they extended Lonzo? Were you surprised? Kobe White, this is a guy that on a very good contract. I understand you might want to build around him and keep someone that with that type of value on your roster as long as you can. But were you surprised with some of the guys that are still there?
Definitely. Let's start with the Zach trade, because that was obviously the big one. And a lot of people were really critical of like not getting additional draft capital or not getting different draft capital. Basically, it was attaching Zach into this De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs trade in order to get their own pick back, which was top 10 protected this year, top 8 in each of the next 2 seasons. And I think a lot of the sentiment was like, if they just tanked a little bit harder this year, they wouldn't have to worry about getting their pick back because it would be in the protected zone. I do think that there is value in getting your future flexibility back. And like, I think a lot of the people that would argue what I just said would also say, well, look, you're probably going to give up the 9th or 10th or 11th pick in a year or 2 anyway. So I do think this protects them. I think a lot of people are now worried, okay, you have your pick back. Are you just going to go for the play-in, or are you going to now package multiple future picks to get like a, not real difference making, franchise caliber player in a trade? So I think a lot of questions yet to be answered. And some of that can be informed by the failure to trade Vucevic and Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu and Lonzo Ball, all of whom I would have traded if I had the opportunity, just because this team really needs to like reset and tear it down and accumulate draft assets. And they just have not prioritized that at all. So, I think with Vooch, they probably had, like, I know the Warriors were interested in him, and there was probably a trade on the table earlier before the deadline, but then at a certain point, they kind of changed their mind and said, look, we're going to either go for Jimmy or KD. And if we can't get those guys, maybe we'll revisit. But obviously they got Jimmy, and that was kind of the move that they were able to make. So I don't think there was a lot of options out there. I know teams were interested in Kobe and Io. I think the Knicks actually poked around with Io. So, they probably had some opportunities, but just weren't able to get like the draft haul that would have pushed them over the edge in order to do it. And I think it's fair to criticize them for that. Like you probably should just get what you can take for some of those guys. And then with Lonzo, there was the rumor about somebody offering them a first round pick, and like they extended him and said, I thought, okay, fine, you extend him. Maybe you give yourself a chance to get a first round pick this summer on a team friendly deal. I think that's still possible. But like, if you had a first round pick on the table, why not just take it now? And
right.
So again, all this stuff, it's like, yes, they are moving towards retooling around some of their younger players, but like, if you're not prioritizing draft picks, if you're not willing to tear it down, like, are you really going in that direction? And I think that's where that sense of frustration from the fan base is coming from.
So it's to the point about the frustration from the fan base. I'm trying to put my mind in I'm basically trying to adapt the mindset of a Bulls fan, and how upset would I be if I saw the deadline that they had, like the LaVine trade. I understood it just because it was like, okay, they finally did it. Like they finally traded Zach LaVine after
you get
last
off some
year,
money and you get your flexibility back. It's fine. It's not
after
great,
being told for like a calendar year he's untradeable. That this is a sunk cost contract. Alan Sepinwall has the phrase ham sandwich time, but that's how they describe Julius Randle for the longest time. Like, it's just time to trade him for, if you can get a ham sandwich back, you're good.
That's hilarious. I like that. So, I'm going to steal that.
By all means, take it. Alan Sepinwall, new Better Call Saul book is very good. Started reading it on vacation, by the way. Having said all that, I guess the point of the flexibility that you're saying, though, I guess my skepticism, and you tell me if Bulls fans if I'm reading this, and if so, do Bulls fans feel any of that skepticism, is to get your own flexibility back when, if it's protected, you could have just kept being bad and the pick conveys anyway, like you still get to keep your pick. And then, maybe work that out in the off season to try and get your basically, I'm wondering, like, was this giving them the freedom to not fully go in the direction of tanking and trying to make sure you're as bad as possible, because this front office has shown, like, if we can make the plan, we'd like to make the plan and try to avoid being as close to the bottom as possible. Is that skepticism warranted?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's exactly how a lot of Bulls fans are feeling. I think the Bulls would say, well, look, we take Zach out of the equation. He's been the best player on the team this year. He's been carrying them and impacting winning at a rate that is, too much for what this team needs to be. So I think they would say, well, you pull the bottom out a little bit by moving Zach. You ensure that you're able to keep your pick. Right now, they're 8th in the tankathon order, but like that could change real quickly if the Blazers start to lose a few more games and the Sixers don't get their stuff together. So there's always that chance, but it's a small chance. And I think it speaks more to the just the approach that they took from the beginning of the year, which was not enough to really bottom out. And so I think that's the crux of the issue, though, is that they're not really willing to bottom out. So I think for this year, yeah, you're probably able to keep the pick. Next year, even if you're a top, a bottom 6 team, bottom 5 team, there's still a small chance that you could lose the pick. So I think it's more about the pick next year and the following year. But I agree, like, it probably would have been smarter to not worry or not stress about the potential to lose the pick, be as bad as possible, and then use Zach to accumulate additional picks from other teams, and really put yourself in a position to like build through the draft. And they just didn't do that.
And then just last thing about the front office, I think it's actually good when fans are outraged, obviously you want them to be happy, but the inverse, being outraged, still shows they care. The worst place you want to be is apathetic. Like, apathy is the last place you want to have your fan base be, because then they're resigned. Like, I'll just say this as a baseball fan, for years under the Wilpons, there was a feeling of apathy. Like, oh, there's absolutely a ceiling. Like, any success they experience, that the New York Mets experience, is just going to be like by accident. And that's why I'm enjoying the world of Steve Cohen and perceived competence, So I then bring that to the Reinsdorfs and to Karnisovas, and I guess you obviously know this better than any of us here in New York. How much is outrage and how much is apathy amongst the fan base?
I think it's a pretty healthy combination of both at this point. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that NBC Sports Chicago, who was the broadcast partner for the Bulls, kind of gave up the broadcast rights this year and decided they didn't want to host the games anymore for whatever reason. And so now the Bulls are basically, they started their own broadcast network. It's called CHSN, but the games aren't on a lot of the local cable packages. So most of the games you can see just using an antenna, but like a lot of people don't do that. And so a lot of people are just not watching the games. I think Forbes recently reported that viewership is down 63%, which is the most in the entire league. So I do think there is some apathy, but then also anytime there's like a big move or lack thereof, that's when the outrage and the frustration comes in. So I actually do think they are moving towards apathy. And to your point, that is a much worse place to be than outrage for sure.
That's like the beginning of a death nail. Like, yeah, like the Bulls are never leaving Chicago, of course, but I mean, them not being able to watch the team and then the team giving you no reason to watch, that's a horrific combination.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, okay, the team's not on TV. This is the perfect time to rebuild and like really pull the plug. And they haven't done that either. And so again, it's just like not committing to any one direction in any of these things. And that's how you end up in the middle. And being in the middle is the apathy of, the NBA. It's like where you just don't want to be.
Yeah, man. Well, look, I'm thankful for the Knicks getting out of that zone. And I wish at least the fans.
Bulls need to take some notes. The Knicks have been awesome.
I just like, that's a city and a franchise. I mean, I have to tell you this, like Michael Jordan played for the franchise. And even if you want to go to like, yes, I know. They did a documentary during the pandemic about it.
I think I saw an episode of that. Yeah.
I think a lot of people saw it, and it ended up being just like a really long Nike commercial, but it ended up working, and a lot of people saw it, and the behind the scenes footage was great. But like, even like we're joking, but returning to a time when the Chicago Bulls were that like the team in the country and on the planet. Like I was talking about this with my cousin the other day. Like, what are the 5 franchises or any franchises that are so ubiquitous that you don't like the casual person, like what my mother-in-law who doesn't follow sports would know who the Yankees are, who the Dodgers are, who the Lakers and the Knicks are, and probably like the Chiefs, the Cowboys. Like there'd be another team, but they might know Michael Jordan, but they probably at this point might not even know who he played for, which is like, to your point, is the sad state of affairs that's where the Bulls
we're
are.
Seeing now like what happens when the big market teams, and like not to say small market teams don't deserve to have great players, they absolutely do, but when the Lakers go out and get Luka, that like reinvigorates the entire NBA fan base, not just Lakers fans. And same with the Knicks. Like now that they're really elite again, that's like, I mean, I'm sure everybody in the chat and everybody in New York watching, like there's just a different feeling in the NBA ecosystem when those big market teams are good. So I absolutely think that the Bulls need to take themselves a little bit more seriously and act like one of those big market teams. They haven't done that. And I think that's, again, how you just kind of end up stuck in this cycle of never being bad enough to then get good, but never being good enough to be actually really good.
I was literally sitting there last night waiting for an Uber at JFK, like watching Lakers Hornets, like a random Wednesday basketball game that I just never would have known existed, but I wanted to see Luka and LeBron and the Lakers, to your point about reinvigorating. So just from a basketball fan standpoint, I'm wishing the best to Bulls fans that they get to watch their team eventually, and that they get to watch a good team. Obviously, one that's worse than the Knicks, of course. I would like to introduce a new segment with you. So Knicks fans, Knicks Film School fans know that we've been partnering with T Squared Social, the outstanding sports bar in Midtown Manhattan. We're doing another watch party this Saturday, much to all of your dismays, because the Knicks lose every time we do watch parties. I've accepted that the KFS curse is real, but we want to start doing Knicks trivia before each game during our watch parties. And I want to test it out on Will by doing Knicks Bulls trivia. So the way this is going to work,
here we go,
is that I'm going to give you 30 seconds to name as many as 5. There's multiple answers to this question. There's close to 24. So as many as 5 players in the NBA, in NBA history, that have played at least 50 games for both the Knicks and the Bulls. I'll say it again because I didn't get that out super clearly. So players that in their career played at least 50 games for both the New York Knicks and the Chicago Bulls. They could be active, they could be retired. That's your question. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Okay, I'm gonna put 30 seconds on the clock on a timer. I'm gonna pull out my phone. Okay, 30 seconds. Ready, set, go.
Okay, Derrick Rose.
That's
I
one.
believe Joakim Noah was on both. I don't know if he played 50 games for the Knicks though.
Joakim Noah played. Let me double check. Joakim Noah played 53 games for the Bulls.
Okay.
So you are
what
correct.
about Taj Gibson? Did he make
Taj
50?
Gibson? Great answer. 175 for the Knicks. Well done.
Nate Robinson. He played, I think, definitely for both.
Definitely played for both. I'm going to assume. Yeah, Nate Robinson played 82 for the Chicago Bulls.
There we go.
Over 300 for the Knicks. One more in 10 seconds.
All right, let's see. Charles Oakley.
Charles Oakley. Well done. Charles Oakley.
Taking back a little bit.
Charles Oakley, to any Knicks fans that want to know this, played 298 for the Bulls and 727 for the Knicks. Well done.
All right, we got him.
Got it done in just over 30 seconds. I accidentally typed in 30 minutes, so you would have had a very long time. Yes. Some other names: Kurt Thomas makes this.
Thinking about Kurt Thomas too.
Jamal Crawford, obviously Eddie Curry, a very famous trade in Knicks history that eventually led to the Bulls getting Joakim Noah. Current New York Knicks assistant coach Rick Brunson played for the Chicago Bulls and the New York Knicks. Bill Cartwright should be named for all the old heads out there. And then former defensive player of the year, Tyson Chandler, who also got drafted.
How could I forget Tyson? Yeah.
Drafted by the Chicago Bulls, and then obviously was part of the Carmelo Anthony era. Also, one more, only played one season with the Knicks, but played a couple years with the Bulls with a very famous right hook, and was in the news today. Bobby Portis.
Bobby played for the Knicks. I kind of forgot about that.
Yes. Oh, and then Ryan Arcidiacono, Jalen Brunson's boy, Villanova, two-time NBA champion, two-time NCAA champion, I should say. Played a bunch for the Bulls, but just 41 games for the Knicks. So just misses the list.
Just missed the cut.
If you would like to partake in some Knicks teams trivia, join us at T-Squared Social this Friday. We'll get started around 6:15. Bring a friend. We could do anywhere from running ISO, if you want to just be yourself, or bring a friend, bring a couple friends. We'll do as many as 5 to a team, I believe, first, second, and third place prizes. So be there or be T-Squared. Let's go to the chat and see what Knicks fans want to ask you about regarding the Chicago Bulls. We will start with the one and only Kevin Danishevsky. He says, "Oh, Andrew, thank you for the super chat, by the way, Kevin. To your esteemed guests," that's a high praise there. Well, esteemed guest.
That is, I like that. I like.
What's it like? What's it like rooting for the LA Angels of Chicago? Good luck on the Sisyphean pursuit, because for a while that was us. That's a Kevin flexing the college words. Well done, Kev. What's it like rooting for?
My fan days are behind me at this point, covering the team every day. That's just, I think those are hard to coexist. But I mean, we were joking about it the other day on our show, like, talking about the expansion and, what about bringing a team to Chicago? What would that be like? I mean, they're the only, New York, LA both have 2 teams. Why not Chicago? So that was kind of a maybe serious, maybe funny joke, but yeah, I mean, like the Bulls, Sisyphean is the best way to put it. Like, it's just every year back in the play-in, every year, one fewer win than the year before, with no real like goal or plan or aspiration to get to a higher level. So I'm glad you guys were able to get out of it. Maybe that means the Bulls will be able to get out of it too, but that is the cycle, and it is not very fun, big picture.
I totally wasn't just looking up what Sisyphean meant. But yes, I
pushing that boulder up the hill.
That's that guy. Got it. Okay. Clearly, I'm very lacking in my Greek mythology and Greek references. But thank you, Kevin, for the super chat and for the question. Next, we're going to go to the Craft NBA, who sends in a super chat. Thank you, DJ. And then the question: Patrick Williams is now shooting 47% at the rim this season. This represents, a year-over-year decline in rim accuracy over the past 4 seasons. What is causing his poor rim finishing? This is from DJ Zulo.
Great question. It's been super weird and very common topic of discussion among the Bulls beat and also just the fan base. I mean, I think at one point he was like 2 of 8 on dunk attempts this year. So I'm not really sure exactly what's going on. Patrick had a really nice article, or I guess Julia Poe from the Chicago Tribune had a really nice article interviewing Patrick about it. And there was some comments about like just palming the ball too much and having to kind of, figure out how to like cup the ball into his wrist or just like, hold it with both hands instead of trying to palm it every time. I think that's been an issue for him. But I mean, his decline overall, like you pay this guy 5 years, $90 million, 4th overall pick. Like he's supposed to be one of your franchise cornerstones. And he just has not really turned into that. I think he's been a little bit underrated in terms of defense and 3-point shooting and just being like a big wing who can kind of spot up and make some shots. But in terms of his own shot creation, it's been a real disappointment this year.
Gotcha. Yeah, DJ's. I can always count on DJ Zeal to notify me or point out a trend of an NBA role player, who name it, that gets a lot of hype, and then I either wasn't realizing how much the hype isn't deserved, or the other way, that like, oh, people need to pay more attention to this. So shout out to DJ Zulo. Check out, if you haven't, Knicks fans, the Q&A that he and Benji Ritholtz did yesterday on our channel. It's available on this feed as well as on the podcast feed. And then last but not least, from vacation, Mr. Jonathan Macri with the super chat. I've always been a fan of Ayo Dosunmu from afar. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Ayo's awesome. He is just straight up a winning player. Defends, runs a break. He basically gets like 4 to 6 points per game after an opponent makes a layup and he just beats him down the court. So he plays really hard. He's a great point of attack defender. He's been a little bit better at creating his own shot, but like just an incredibly solid role player that any like team trying to win at a high level would be lucky to have. And making only $7 million this year and next year, that's the kind of guy like we were talking about earlier. Like, I don't know why they didn't capitalize on that. 2 playoff runs, cheap contract guy who can give you 25 minutes a game off the bench if you're a championship caliber team. So I think that's just the kind of guy Ayo is. Super hard worker. He's really developed into a leader of this Bulls team. And hopefully he has a chance to win at a high level at some point in his career.
Well, hopefully that high level doesn't begin tonight at Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks. As we talked about at the beginning of this episode, the Knicks should be able to take care of business against the Chicago Bulls team, who has not played that well since January 15th, which means I'm fully expecting this to be a very close game down the stretch where the Knicks can't get a stop, and I have to hope that talent wins out against the Chicago Bulls. Will, as always, it is good to see you. Congratulations on just cooking on the first ever edition of KFS Trivia. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and all the work going on at the CHGO Bulls and the CHGO Sports Network.
Yeah, CHGO Sports on YouTube. I cover the Bulls every day. We do 5 shows a week, but we also cover all the other major Chicago sports teams. So a lot of great content. And then you can read my writing on our site, allchgo.com.
What's the focus right now of is it the Bulls? Is it NFL draft? Like what's getting the most attention?
This is a Bears town for sure. So
right.
Draft, Ben Johnson fever, just so excited about what the Bears can be next year, even though they were quite a disappointment this year. But the Cubs getting Kyle Tucker was pretty exciting. So I think people are excited about just the summer and it warming up here. It's like 15 degrees right now in Chicago. So I'm ready for that too.
Yeah. I think we all are ready. I spent the week in Florida, and I'm now coming home and putting sweats on last night was not my ideal scenario, but
I know I'm wearing like a jacket in the house. It's freezing.
I'm not complaining, obviously. Will, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to everybody for joining me for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. We try to do this live before every game. Tomorrow's preview game against the Cavs will not be live. It'll be pre-recorded, but as always, thank you for tuning in when it is live and participating in this show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. As I mentioned, I'll be back tomorrow to preview, hopefully, the chance to get a fourth straight win against the Cavs. We'll see what happens in this Bulls game. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace.